It all started when I made my new friend. We will say her name is Jennifer. Jennifer and I were best friends. Although, it was kind of weird because she was really popular. She was the pretty girl in school, and I was known more as the lonely, creepy outcast. Anyways, we would spend all of our time together at school. And to be honest, I started developing feelings for her. We would skip class together as well, and find any excuse to meet up during school. But for some reason, she was always too busy after school and on the weekends. I thought she liked me too, until she started dating the biggest, most muscular jock I've ever seen. Like ever. I'm like talking his arms were like the size of sculpted milk jugs. Now I know what you might be thinking. Is the writer of this going to be the stalker of this girl? And the answer is no. After remaining friends for a few months longer, she told me I was too depressing to be around and told me to go kill myself. But that's another story that I'll tell one day. It ties into the stalker story because the stalker showed up after she told me that. I very vividly remember the first night it happened. Those eyeballs looking through the living room window at 3 a.m. while I'm on my PC playing games. I turn my head and I see just two eyes through the window. I remember thinking, is that just my reflection? And then I got up and walked closer. Mind you, I'm in my boxers at 3 a.m., home alone. So I get closer to the window and the eyes blinked. They blinked, and as I got right up to the window, the flash of a camera went off and the eyes were gone. Fast forward about 2 weeks after the frightful night where I had to change my boxers. I'm in class now. Jennifer, from earlier in the story, is sitting behind me. Her huge protein-packed boyfriend is sitting next to her. I can hear them whispering behind me. Here's how their conversation went. Her: I kind of feel bad for him. I understand why you told me to tell him to leave me alone, but he just looks so miserable. Him: It's okay. I feel bad too now. But he was bringing you down, and you're happier now. I'm sure he will be okay. Her: Yeah, I hope so. But he should have new friends soon, as long as the new girl in the back of the class keeps staring at him like that. Now don't get me wrong, Jennifer and her boyfriend weren't bad people. They may seem like it, but in all honesty, I was just in a rough place. So I'm sorta glad she ended up getting happier with someone she truly loved. It was the new girl's comment that got me though. New girl? What new girl? I don't see it. Wait, why does she look familiar? And for some crazy reason, it didn't click in my brain. I didn't make the connection yet. So fast forward a month. I've started noticing someone drawing my name inside hearts on the desks and the tables, and even my locker at school. I didn't know whether to feel weirded out or feel good, knowing somebody thought that I was worth liking. Now I needed to know who it was. That weekend, I went to a friend's house. It's about midnight on a Saturday, and me and my friend were saving up enough money for a pack of cigarettes. It was a pack of Newports, and it was too cold outside to smoke outside, so we went into the bathroom, turned on the fan, and started to smoke. About halfway through my cigarette, I could have sworn I heard someone giggling quietly. My first thought was, how the hell is he laughing and smoking like that at the same time? And then he points it out. He says, "Why do you keep giggling, dude?" I told him probably about 100 times that it wasn't me. We then heard a crash in the living room. We both rushed out, but there was nobody there. But the back door was wide open. We look at each other, and then I run, shut and locked the back door, and then we barricaded ourselves in the room. 2 days later, I get a text from an unknown number. It's a picture. A picture of a girl with her face scribbled out, standing in my friend's living room 2 days before. Now I was scared. I didn't know what or why this was happening to me. I showed my friend the picture and he says, "I fucking know her." I went wide-eyed and asked who it was. He replies, "Isn't that the girl who came to our school not too long ago?" I could tell by that jacket. I told him there's no way of knowing based off of that jacket. But then he started laughing. I asked him what's so funny and he says, "Remember that girl that I used to date back in middle school? That you met one time because she was from another school? Well, that's her." He just keeps laughing and laughing. At this point, I'm just dumbfounded. Not at the fact of it's his ex, but that she found where I live and she took pictures of me. The next day, Tuesday at school, I confront her. I asked her why she was stalking me, and she just looks at me, clearly having no clue what I'm talking about. She claims that she doesn't even know me. The stalker wasn't her, and at this point, I didn't know what to do. I started staying in my room more, which has no windows, and locking the door. Nothing happened for a while. I thought I was free, but that's when I found it. A note in my room saying, "Why do you try to hide from me? I just want you to love me as much as I love you. Just accept me. Meet me on the football field at 9 p.m. on Sunday." I did what any curiously terrified person would do. I didn't call the police. I went to the football field. So, long story short, come to find out the stalker, whom of which was a girl, was one of Jennifer's ex-best friends who knew me from conversations she had with Jennifer. I guess she thought me and her were the same, and that the girl that we trusted betrayed us both, so we were destined to be together. At this point, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't freak out. I just stood there. And then she hugged me and told me she knows my pain, the depression, the hate from others. She told me that it's okay, and then she ran off. I just stood there, not knowing what to say or do or anything. I never saw her again. Never got any more notes or pictures or anything. The scariest part, when I asked Jennifer about her, apparently Jennifer's so-called ex-best friend didn't exist. Jennifer didn't know the girl, and neither did I. When I was a kid, I used to live with my parents in this small town. There was about only 70 to 80 people maybe living there at the same time. I remember the good times I had with my friends, being outside all day, playing different games and getting into trouble. Our favorite game was Ding Dong Ditch. We used to terrorize our neighbors that way. Our neighbors were kind, friendly people, but there was one neighbor. Everybody was scared of him. He was mentally ill, and our parents warned us not to mess with him and to stay away from his house. His name was Martin, and he was about 35 years old at the time. Martin was really creepy. He used to get out in the middle of the night, and he would sneak into people's backyards just to look through their windows and make creepy noises. One time he came to my house, and my dad caught him and ran out of the house to confront him, but he didn't catch him. The next day, my dad went to his house to confront him and told him that if he comes near my house again, he would kill him. After that, every time Martin saw me outside, he would smile at me in a creepy way, and I remember being terrified by him. Now, when I was 18 years old, I moved out of my parents' house, and I started living on my own. I found a job in the city as a security guard in a nightclub that was about 4 hours away from my parents' house, so I just needed to move there. All my friends stayed in the city where I grew up, though. 5 years had passed. Some of my friends that were older than me got married. Some of them got kids, including my best childhood friend, Steven. One day I texted Steven that I will be in town because I got a little bit of time off due to an injury. Some drunk guy hit me with a beer bottle and made a small cut in the back of my head. I could have gone back to work, but I just used the situation to get some time off, and I was able to go visit my parents and my friends. The next day I went to see my parents and spend some time with them. We had lunch together, and then I went to go see Steven. He lived just a few houses from mine. When I got there, we grabbed some beers, and then we went to his backyard to hang out. He seemed to be happy to see me, but something was wrong. I could see it in his eyes. So I decided to ask him what was wrong. He said it was nothing special, but I made him tell me. His wife left him for some other guy and left him and his daughter. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He never mentioned it to me when we spoke on the phone or texted, and we did that a lot. He said it wasn't the only problem. He needs to go to a town that's about 6 hours away from our town, to a job interview, because he lost his job, and that he needed to move there if he gets the job there. He said that he had something to ask me, but he was embarrassed. I told him to ask me that I would do everything for him. He asked me to babysit his daughter, Emma, for 2 days while he was away because he couldn't bring her with him. I said no problem, and then we continued drinking our beer and having fun. Steven told me to come to his house the next day at 7 a.m. The next morning I came to his house. Steven was waiting in the front yard with his daughter Emma. I said hello to Emma, and Steven explained to her that I will be babysitting her for the next 2 days while he is out of town. She seemed really happy about that. I could see that Steven was worried, but I assured him that everything was going to be okay. He kissed Emma and then left. That day the weather was beautiful. First we went to the park, then we went to my parents' house for lunch. Then after that it was getting dark, so I told Emma that we needed to go home. On our way home, I was holding Emma's hand, and I was looking at my phone, texting Steven about the day. I was talking to Emma, and I was still looking at my phone when I felt Emma's hand squeeze harder. And then I stopped talking. So I looked up, and I saw Martin. I haven't seen him for years, but he looked really old now. But he still had that creepy look in his eyes. I could see that Emma was scared of him, so I picked her up. The whole time Martin and I didn't break eye contact. We finally got home and I put Emma down and I locked the door. She said that she was really afraid of Martin and that he hurt some kids. I calmed her down and assured to her that she is safe with me. We then watched some cartoons and then Emma went to bed. Emma was asleep, so I called Steven to tell him that everything was fine and that Emma was sleeping. He had just arrived to the hotel, and we continued talking over the phone. After about 10 minutes of talking, I decided to ask Steven if the kids were still afraid of Martin, and he said yes. He also told me that some strange things had happened in our town. So I asked, what things? What are you talking about? He said that 4 kids were missing, and that he doesn't trust anyone anymore, except for me. I was really shocked to hear this. We continued talking for about 5 more minutes, and then he said he needed to get some sleep, and that he will check on me and Emma in the morning. After our conversation, I went on the internet and I started to search any news articles about these missing kids. Come to find out, it was true. 4 kids were missing, 1 boy and 3 girls. They were missing for over a month. Eventually, I fell asleep in the living room on the couch. It was 2 a.m. and I was woken up because I heard someone walking around in the house and some clicking noise at the door. I went to the door and the clicking noise stopped. I looked through the window, but I couldn't see anyone. Then I checked all of the windows, and there was no one outside. Then I went to go check on Emma. She was sleeping. I went back to the living room, and something caught my eye. I saw a shadow outside. I opened the front door and stepped outside. Someone was standing behind the tree in front of the house. I got closer to see, and it was Martin. I got furious and told him to fuck off, and if I saw him again, I will kill him with my bare hands. He just looked at me and smiled and then started to walk towards his house. I got back inside and went into the bathroom to take a shower to calm myself down. I was in the shower for maybe 20 minutes when I heard glass breaking. I quickly went outside of the bathroom and I could see broken glass on the floor and Martin. He was trying to get inside of the house. I started running toward him to kick his ass when I saw he had a knife. I grabbed his hand immediately and tried to take the knife from him. He tried to stab me a couple of times, but he didn't. He just cut my hand a little. After about 2 minutes of wrestling and punching him, he let go of the knife, and I got on top of him and started to punch him in the face. Then I heard Emma screaming. I looked up. She was standing there in front of me, looking at me, while I was punching Martin. I told her to go to the bathroom and lock the door. That was when I felt the worst pain in my life. Martin had grabbed the knife somehow and stabbed me in the leg. He pushed me away and started to run towards Emma. She was screaming still. I managed to grab him by the leg when he got up, and he fell face forward on the ground. I got on his back, grabbed his hair, and started banging his head on the floor. After the second blow, he was unconscious. I quickly grabbed Emma and grabbed my phone and locked us in the bathroom. I was bleeding really bad, so I put a towel over my leg and tried to tighten it. I called the police and explained everything to them. The police came in about 20 minutes with 6 patrol cars. I went outside when I heard the sirens. Martin was gone. The police officer called an ambulance because I did mention that I was hurt, and we stayed with him while the others searched Stephen's house. 5 minutes later, I heard something going on inside. We heard a gunshot. The police officers that were in the house came out with Martin. He was in handcuffs, and he was looking at the ground. When I saw him, I fell unconscious. I woke up in the hospital the next day. Emma, Stephen, my mom, and my dad were all in this room with me. They all hugged me when I opened my eyes. The first thing that I asked was, did they catch Martin? Then my mom asked Emma if she could look at some of her toys out in the hallway. The two of them left the room. My dad told me that Martin was in jail and that the police went into the house. They found the missing kids, and they found evidence linking Martin to several murders that have taken place in the surrounding cities in recent years. After a while, Martin confessed to everything. To give you some sort of idea of how the store looked that I, female 19, worked at, looks like, imagine a big squared warehouse. At the very front of the store are the front lanes, entrance and exit, and at the very, very, very back of the store is the electronics department. Once you walk down past the front lanes, going down towards the market, there's a big walkway that leads down to the electronics, and you could see some of the book aisles, but that's about it. 2 nights ago, I closed. We usually close at midnight on the weekends, and we were pretty short-staffed. Many people called out, and one of those people were supposed to be there in the toys department, which is right across from the electronics. Usually toys and electronics are pretty busy, but that night there wasn't really anyone shopping around these departments. There are all call buttons that guests could press that will notify team members where service is needed. So now it's about 45 minutes before the store closes. I have to put all of the Apple products away in the smart cart and bring it to the stock room in the back room warehouse. As soon as I unlocked the stockroom, I started to feel extremely uncomfortable. I've been in there before many times, but for some reason it felt like there was someone waiting around the corner in that stockroom to scare me. I pushed the cart in and locked the door, and then I walked quickly back to the department. As I was approaching my work area, a call button started going off. Service needed in electronics. Who is responding? But as I was walking towards the call button, I didn't hear or see anyone. Mind you, I was pretty close to the call button, so I don't think they could have walked away that fast. I cleared the call and turned around and grabbed a few carts when the call button went off again. Service needed in electronics. 30 seconds remaining. Who is responding? I cleared that call already, so I was a bit confused to why it still needed the countdown, and the fact that I turned my back for not even 2 seconds and the button goes off again kind of scared me. I cleared the call and went back to work. After that, nothing really happened. 10 minutes before the store closes, everyone is supposed to clear their departments by walking down the aisles and checking for guests. I was walking down the toy department when I noticed that there was a guest looking at some board games. His back was faced towards me, so I didn't get a good look at him. I told him that the store was closing in about 10 minutes, but he didn't even look at me. He just mumbled something and started walking away. 5 minutes before the store closed, I was walking back up to the employee's room to clock out when I felt like there was someone walking behind me. I turn around and there's no one there, so I just disregarded it. Suddenly I heard one of the Apple alarms going off, and since there was still some time on the clock, I kind of just ran back to the electronics to turn it off, but I noticed that there was no one coming from that department. I did another quick walk around through the toys and electronics, and I saw the same man standing in the exact same aisle where I told him 5 minutes before that the store was closing. I reminded him that he needed to make his way towards the front, and he just raised his hand, back still facing towards me, and walked away. I followed him to make sure that he was walking towards the front. Once I reached that employee's room, I just walked in and figured the front lanes would take care of it. So now it's midnight. The store was now officially closed, and I was one of the last people to walk out of that employee's room. I'm walking towards the front when I just so happen to look down the walkway that leads to the electronics. This is when I see the same man walking down the book aisle towards the toys. This time I yell, "Sir!" and start running down the walkway to catch up to him. But by the time I get down there to the book aisle, he's disappeared. I literally walked back through both departments to check if there was anyone, and I didn't see him. The Apple alarms are going off again, so I walked back to disable it, and then I started hearing boxes. There were boxes falling in the direction where I had previously seen the man. And of course, I walked down to find a huge mess of toys on the ground, but see no one. I start yelling and saying that the store was closed, that he had to leave. Once again, the Apple alarm goes off again, but I was too scared to walk up that aisle, so I ran the opposite way towards the front of the store. That's when I notified the team lead that there was some man in the back of the store who wouldn't leave and causing a mess. She told me to leave and that she would take care of it, so I just went home. Today I walked into work, and the security and the team lead from the other night asked me if I could come into the office. They showed me some footage from the 2 nights before. The footage showed me talking to absolutely no one. The man was not on the footage at all. The camera footage shows me pressing the call buttons, walking away, coming back to clear them. The footage shows me setting off the Apple alarms and disabling them. The footage showed me knocking over the toys and running away. I am completely shocked, and I don't know what to do. I'm so scared right now. I don't know what to do. It all started a few days ago. Now I'm sitting alone in my basement praying to God whatever is outside will just turn around and leave me alone. On July 25th, I accessed the deep web for the first time after downloading the Tor browser and just toying with the idea, but being far too much of a pansy to actually go through with it. On that day, though I manned up and went for it, I finally got on. I avoided clicking on anything that didn't have a description on a list of websites, eventually going on to the hidden wiki because it provided a little more information on what I would be clicking on. I only read, I never clicked on anything out of the fear of what would happen. That is, of course, until I came across a website advertising hitman services. I would never, ever hire a hitman for any reason, but I thought to myself that there was no way that this was a real thing. I went ahead and clicked the link and read through the website, reading the prices for different services. Beatings, killings, made to look like suicide, murder, an accident, maiming. So many options for so many different types of people. I got a little frightened and I minimized the browser, closing my laptop and moving on with my day. When I got home later that evening, I powered my laptop back up and did typical teenager things. Music downloading, Reddit, Facebook, you know. Eventually I passed out and I didn't hear my laptop hit the carpet or anything. The next day I just went on with my regular schedule, never even looking at my laptop, until the 28th. So yesterday. I opened Tor again in the afternoon and let my curiosity get the best of me. I opened it to full screen, which earned me a warning about how it could possibly make me easier to track down. Not sure how, since my IP address is in Stockholm and I'm nowhere near there, but I shrugged it off and I just kept scrolling through this wiki. I got curious again and went back to the Hitman site, but it was gone. I've checked the listings and everything. The website is just completely gone. A little freaked out, but not really worried, I moved on back to regular internet. This brings us to now. I was about to settle down and go to bed when I heard something very unnerving. The crickets and frogs were almost completely silent. I live in the country, and the crickets and frogs around my house are wickedly loud at night, but they were very good for sounds coming in through my window. I sat still and listened for about an hour, and they slowly began to get louder and louder, so I assumed that the danger was gone. Now fully awake, I pulled up my laptop, feeling a little anxious because of the warnings I got while browsing the deep web yesterday. In the past 5 minutes, a few things have happened. First, my Tor browser was open and running, even though I had closed it. Second, my webcam was on. Third, the crickets and frogs aren't going anymore, and someone is gently tapping on my bedroom door. My basement bedroom door. The threat never left. The threat just somehow moved inside my house. I'm typing this from my phone in my closet, trying desperately not to lose my mind. I'm trapped, guys. I don't know what's happening. Please, help me. I need to buy myself off of the deep web before someone else does. I don't know how much time I have. I saw the offer hours ago. The only thing I can really tell you now is how I happened upon myself. It's stupid, really. Really, really, really fucking stupid. I was trying to impress my friends. We were all enrolled in IT classes at our school. We would take turns seeing who could bring up the most fucked up shit they could find. It started out with showing our friends websites on the deep web where people could buy drugs from. Drugs we'd never even heard of. That got boring really quick. Other friends began upping their content, to try to stand out in the game of, I'm more tech savvy than you. They would bring more and pictures, each more disgusting than the gruesome ones that we saw last. Pictures of people dying, people being tortured in unimaginable ways, people that were already dead. One person brought up a really messed up site, a specific site. Instead of people saying exactly how fucked up this was, and how it should all just stop, and how this should have never happened in the first place, they congratulated her, gave her pats on the back. They literally asked her how she could even sit properly in her chair because of how big her balls were. I felt like vomiting from it. I felt like beating the ever-living shit out of every single person that couldn't believe how fucked up it was. Finding a site like this on the internet as an accomplishment. Who the fuck does that? I didn't say anything though. They began to notice that, and I had never shown anything myself. A specific word slowly became my nickname at school. School became a living hell for me. My friends began shoving these horrible pictures at my face whenever they could. When I cried and vomited, they claimed that they were just desensitizing me. Everything became too much though. I promised myself I wouldn't venture too deep, that I would only stay long enough to find something to appease them. At this point, we were long past the point of finding cool drugs or what else. I knew that I had to find something that would hold importance. At this point, I had been on the deep web for 3 hours. 5 hours was what it took to put an offer on me on the deep web. At one point, I remember opening a seemingly blank page. Immediately, the light next to my computer camera flashed briefly. 5 or so seconds. I immediately minimized my browser to close photo booth, only to find that it wasn't even open. I didn't think anything of it. I was tired and had school the next day, so I closed everything down and went to sleep. The next few days went the same as the last, until yesterday. When I walked in, everyone was huddled around one desk, talking in hushed voices. A few of the girls were crying, and all of them were pale and covered in sweat. I really didn't want to see whatever had caused this reaction. Nobody had noticed that I walked in until after class had started. I caught several of them staring at me during class. They had probably planned a new way to make me go home sobbing. I tried to leave class as quick as I could, but one of them caught me by the shoulder and spun me around. "We need to talk." His voice was quivering, and his clammy, trembling hands were soaking through my t-shirt. He led me to the back of the classroom where the other students in the same shape as him were, or possibly worse. They were all huddled in the corner. He began passing out pictures. When it was my turn, I told them I didn't want to see whatever they had. "No, you need to see this." Something about the way that he said it. It told me that he was serious, and it wasn't just regular bullying. I cracked open one eye. I saw a girl on the paper, along with some short description and a price. I opened my eyes further, and I saw that the ad was of some sort. I thought, oh, this isn't that bad. It hadn't fully hit me yet, until I read what was in the description. The description said, "Hi, it's me again, back with some more for you guys. This one looks fairly young, with a bit extra weight on her. I don't know. Need to get more pictures. I think it was her first time here. She wasn't protected at all. It was so easy. Enough about that, though. For now, her starting price is $118,000. It will go up or down when we get more pictures and do the physical inspection. Anyways, we'll keep you updated." It was a picture of me, staring at my computer intently. I had no social media. The only pictures of me were the ones that I had taken with the group. There were so many emotions swirling through me. One that stood above was confusion. The crippling fear was lurking in the shadows for now. How had this person gotten a picture of me? My mind went back to when the light on my camera turned on. One question answered. Next was the paralyzing fear that had set in. I felt my heart stop completely, then beat violently in my throat and ears. My stomach had dropped. My eyes searched furiously over the paper for any information about me. I felt relieved at the fact that my full name, along with my address, wasn't there. That all came crashing down when I realized that the person that had posted the ad had these, but chose not to put them in the description in case anybody wanted to grab me without paying. I knew without a doubt that the others were going to be sold too. I passed out and woke up in the nurse's office, who told me that I had a fever. My mom picked me up and took me home. I went straight to my room and locked the door. I haven't touched my personal computer since. I put tape on the phone camera as well, even though I know my efforts are futile. Everything I hear now is someone is out to get me. The only sick thing that confronts me now is that the pretty bitches that made me do this in the first place are going to sell quicker than me. I got his private message earlier yesterday morning. He saw my comment on his post and he came to me with some guidance. He seemed troubled by his wording had somehow turned into an advertisement for the shadow web, as we call it. At first I thought him as delusional. There are dozens of messages and message boards that are just dedicated to the deep web. Even a couple of subreddits right here on Reddit. And still this fellow is acting like he solely is responsible for leaking the deep web. I assured him that people were just playing along like they always do, and he need not to worry about it. Then he tried to correct me. He insisted that the shadow web is not the deep web, nor is it the dark web. It's something far more sinister. He said that it was way more fucked up. Later in the evening, he gave me his phone number. He told me to send him a text if I wanted to be proven wrong. And with that, our volley of private messages ended. A quick reverse lookup showed that the area code was from a place called Valleyfield, Quebec. That's in Canada. It looked perfectly harmless, so I sent him a text. He replied in a couple of minutes. What he sent back was a MMS with a picture of a piece of paper, the one that the creepy customer had supposedly given him. The first thing that I noticed about the slip was the font type. It looked as though it was printed directly from Notepad. I guess that this person who gave him the slip had been carrying it around so that he could access the shadow web from public computers or cyber cafes. He probably had the steps memorized at one point and no longer needed it. The second thing that I noticed was the steps were, in fact, not accessing the deep web or the dark web. At least not a dark web that I'm familiar with. It took about 45 minutes to locate the specific build of Netscape Navigator, curiously required for getting into the shadow web gate. I found a torrent for it on one of the deep web forums where I frequently lurked. It came with a Trojan horse, unsurprisingly, but I still installed it anyway. Whoever tries to backdoor my machine would regret ever trying, I can promise you that. At least I was concerned to the fabled gateway, and to my surprise, I was wrong. This wasn't just the deep web / dark web after all. And he had every reason to be worried. Let me try to explain in layman's term. If the deep web was the bad neighborhood in your town, the dark web would be its haunted house, that abandoned mansion at the end of one-way roads with no street lamps. This shadow web then would be the windowless cellar at the end of the passage behind the hidden door in that very haunted house. Before I go on, I want to clear something up. When I left the comment on the original post, I mentioned that I frequently visited the dark web, and somebody left a comment calling me a monster. I'm not. I don't go on there to look for scam victims or to dispute kitty stuff. I go there to find the people that do. My line of work prohibits me from elaborating, so I leave the rest for your imagination. After stopping by a few of these sites, actually spending the whole day on there, on this shadow web, I finally began to appreciate the gravity of this revelation. I'll spare you the details, but suffice to say I have never been more convinced that cryptocurrency should be outlawed. I came across one particular site called rumcake.sh.web, and from first glance it resembled one described as Kinluck's post. Then I saw that site was merely one of the dozens in that network of these just torture rooms that broadcast to people. I called him back on the number that he had messaged me on. I just wanted to tell him he was right. This was true, and he did the right thing, and the information that he had provided may end up saving lots of lives. But he didn't pick up. It's pretty late in Quebec. I suppose he could be sleeping. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that this wasn't something I could just tackle on my own. I needed to tell my superior about this. Since it was almost 3 a.m., I hesitated to call her. Yet I was just too excited to let this go until the morning. So I sent her an IM, telling her about the big fish that I needed her help on reeling up. She immediately responded with, "Call." The conversation that ensued was rather shocking. In short, our agency did know about the existence of the shadow web, but no leads ever turned up about it actually. Until now, that is. Kinluck's post on here on No Sleep had violated the shadow web's code of silence. On top of that, he was careless enough to use his regular Reddit account. There are probably some people who are probably very upset with his expose on the shadow web. From what I was told, his life is in danger. Being somewhat of a rookie at this organization, I've been advised to stay out of this investigation. My boss warned I might end up with the crosshairs on my head if I didn't take proper measurements to conceal myself. It's 5 a.m. now, and I still haven't heard back from him. I really hope he's okay. One more thing before I log off. For those of you who have tried to get on the dark web or the shadow web after seeing yesterday's post, I strongly recommend that you just disconnect your microphones and cover up your webcams. Don't even charge your cell phones with a USB port. Most importantly, don't ever try connecting again. My child is frightened of ghosts, and I have been constantly trying to help my child get over her fears, but it has been a struggle. The trials a child must go through in life, and all of the fears, anxiety, trepidation they must face is daunting. As a responsible parent, I have been doing my best to show my daughter that ghosts don't exist, and I have taken many steps to assure her that ghosts don't exist. I myself used to be scared of ghosts as a child, but my father helped me through it, and I will do the same for my daughter. In our family, there is a tradition that we do when one member is scared of ghosts, and I called all of the extended family and neighborhood friends to come to my house. The main event was going to be about my daughter realizing that ghosts don't exist, and it will be nice for everyone to be together as it has been for a long time. My daughter was terrified and even more anxious as she was going to be the main attraction, but I told her that after the event she will no longer be scared of ghosts. Then when the day arrived and all of the guests gathered around the house with a man tied up to a chair, my daughter was in the middle. The man tied up to the chair was killed, and as he died, I told my daughter, "Observe this man's dying body. Is there any spirit coming out of him?" And my daughter just stared at him with wide eyes. For hours, we all just stared at his dead body, as we all were witnessing no kind of spirit coming from this man's body. This was a lesson to my daughter, and a reminder to everyone else in the room that ghosts and spirits don't exist. Then on another night, my daughter got scared again and killed our cat. She looked at me and said, "Just wanted to remind myself that ghosts and spirits don't exist." I have a teacher at school that teaches a variety of subjects, and he is generally well liked. The only strange thing about him is that he doesn't call any of the students by their names, but by their future potential, from his opinion. He comes in class and starts doing the register. "Potential murder," teacher shouts out, and Callum raises his hand, as he knows it's him because the teacher always calls him by that name. "Potential burglar," teacher shouts out, and Brian puts his hand up, as he has been called that many times by the teacher. "Potential psychopath," teacher shouts out, and Emily puts her hand up, as she knows it's her because the teacher always calls her that. "Potential cannibal," and I now put my hand up because he always calls me that. He has something for everyone, from a potential freak accident to potential evil genius. I admit it was funny at first, but now I just want him to call me by my name, my real name, which is Joshua. On another day, our teacher starts doing the register, and as usual, he calls everyone by their potential and not their real names. But then he calls Callum by his real name. We were all shocked. I asked Callum why our teacher didn't call Callum potential murder anymore. Callum told me that the reason our teacher doesn't call him potential murder anymore is because it's not potential anymore. It's real. Callum actually murdered someone. He murdered some homeless man because he knew it will make the teacher call him by his real name. Callum then told me to take a bite of a dead man by ripping some of his flesh out and cooking it, as it was the only way to make my teacher call me by my real name. I took a chunk out of a dead guy, and he hadn't been dead for long. I cooked it and ate it. The next day for register, my teacher called me Joshua because I am not a potential cannibal. I am a real one. Coden, I am hearing voices, and I cannot stand it anymore. Every day I hear loud voices, and it's becoming highly irritating, and I am struggling to do the basic things. These voices in my head are so random, and I hear them at home, at work, and even on the bus. I hate the voices, and they provide nothing useful for me or my life. They are a nuisance, and I wish the voices spoke to me about intelligent things. But instead, the voices are ramble and incoherent to me. I wish the voices would speak true wisdom to me, but instead the voices are idiotic and time-wasting. "What's it like hearing voices?" Coden asked me. "Go find a room where you can lock yourself in, and make sure that this room is in a loud area full of people. Make sure you are alone in this room. The voices you hear inside of the room that is coming from outside, that is the closest thing you will ever experience or have a little taste of hearing voices. The noises are not coming from the room, and you being the only one in the room, it will be as if you are hearing the voices. That is what I experience every day." I did as you asked, and I was inside of an empty room. I locked the door. Outside was busy, and I could hear people talking outside. As I was inside of the room on my own, listening to these noises outside, it was like I was hearing voices, I can kind of imagine the torment you go through. Coden said to me, and I was happy, that I had someone that kind of understood me. It's kind of like being in your own apartment, and when the next apartment that's next to it is being noisy, the irritants you will feel, even though you might live alone, and the sound isn't coming from your flat. That is what hearing voices is like. I want it to stop, and I cannot sleep properly anymore because of these horrible voices. All the voices do in my head is just talk nonsense, and I just want to blow my brains out. How can existence be this cruel? And the worst thing is that the voices make me useless. The voices disable me, and I imagine at all the things I could have achieved if it wasn't for these voices. Then one day I found a way to start destroying the voices and to start fighting back. I brought Code into my home, and he started screaming at what I had done. I told him I killed the voices, but Coden kept saying that I killed my roommates. Yes, my roommates were causing such noise with their mouths, and now I know how to get rid of the voices in my head when I am outside. Mommy, why can't we leave Ray? My children tell me that all the time, and Ray is physically abusive, and being the stepfather of my children, he is dangerous to be around. He is a steroid junkie who likes to build his body, and he has hit me and my kids so many times. Yes, he leaves bruises and marks, but they can only heal when Ray is in a good mood. When Ray is in a good mood, everything is fantastic. When Ray is not in a good mood, everything is hell like a storm. He destroys things. We should leave, but I don't. I remember taking the kids and leaving Ray, but the bruises and cuts weren't healing and becoming worse, even septic. It's only when Ray found us and was in a good mood that our cuts and bruises had healed instantly, right in front of our eyes. It felt good, and I remember running away from Ray another time with no cuts or bruises though, and I started to miss Ray's good moods. When Ray is in a good mood, everything is amazing and life goes exactly the way I want it. So everything starts again at box 1, and Ray is simply Ray. Some people pay Ray to hurt them when he is in a bad mood, and then to heal them when he is in a good mood. They too are addicted to Ray's good moods, and everyone wants Ray to be in a good mood. I remember when Ray was in a bad mood, and he had beaten up both my kids, and they were crying and begging me to take them away from Ray. Then Ray suddenly turned into a good mood, and their bruises and cuts had healed. Then my kids loved Ray again, and this is a good life when Ray is in a good mood, and nothing can go wrong. When Ray killed our dog in a rage, we still kept the body of the dog, so when Ray was in a good mood, the dog can come back to life, only for when Ray is in a good mood, and when the good mood stops, the dog will go back to being dead. I remember once when Ray hurt my children again, and their cuts and bruises weren't healing, because Ray was in a bad mood for a long time. I thought they were going to die, but luckily he got into a good mood and they all healed. This year I have been experiencing Ray in a good mood, and never the bad. Only my kids were experiencing his bad sides. Then my eldest child said to me, "Mommy, just like the dead dog, you only open your eyes when Ray is in a good mood." Even darkness itself needs a hug, and you may not think it does, but darkness needs a hug now and then. When you go past a room when the light is off, just know that the darkness inside that room loves hugs and contact. So you should just go in and give it a hug. And to others it may seem like you are hugging yourself in the darkness. But really, you are hugging the darkness. You giving warmth and a bit of care to the darkness. Darkness is so lonely and misunderstood. Give the darkness hugs and show it some care. I have made it a mission to get people to hug darkness. So I rent out a room and never switch anything on. And it is complete darkness. I bring people to hug darkness during the night times, when the darkness is more alive, stronger, and can feel the warmth. I got a new group who are going to hug the darkness, and I take them for a walk around the area. We go past some undesirable people who are basically creepy and outcasts in society. My group make comments about them in a negative tone. I take them somewhere to eat, and then after eating, it's time to hug darkness. It was pitch black, and the darkness definitely needed a hug. No one is allowed to use anything that produces light inside this room. I tell everyone to start hugging the darkness, and they do, and they are loving it. People started to feel the darkness become more physical, and that meant that the darkness was loved being hugged. The darkness was loving hugs so much. The darkness was forming multiple bodies, and this was to make it easier for people to hug the darkness more. It was all going so well until a guy started using the torchlight when he wasn't supposed to. He saw people hugging the undesirables they walked past outside, and I could tell by the look in his eyes that now he knew this truth. There is no such thing as hugging the darkness, but rather it was a lie. This was all for the undesirable people in society to be hugged by desirable people. The darkness was to keep them covered, as no one would want to go next to them and hug them if they could see them. The man with the torchlight had realized that he was hugging a homeless alcoholic in the darkness, and he shouted at the top of his lungs. Then the rest started shouting and screaming, and they all ran out. And they were all using torchlights now to see who was in the darkness. You should hug the darkness from time to time. It gets so lonely and cold. Years ago, when I was still a teenager, my friend Justin and I would often go longboarding at night, as my friend and I were quite the night owls. We loved the freedom of almost never seeing another soul on the roads or the path that we frequented. Even when using the main roads, it would be very rare to see a car out so late at night in such a rural area, and you could see and or hear them coming from afar due to their headlights and the noise of the vehicle disrupting the peaceful silence of the night. We were really into that at the time, and would often ride our boards for miles and miles, sometimes not even arriving home until the sun was up. But one particular night, we decided to ride a few miles away from our usual backroads areas to take one of our favorite hidden routes. It began with a narrow, paved path that was one piece of land separating two sides of a long lake. It would often be overflowing with the rain, and we wanted to seize the opportunity to use it before it rained again and went underwater again. It was roughly 2 miles long, and it was extremely relaxing to ride through due to the scenery. After making it to the end of the lake, we decided to continue moving and turn into a very close path that leads directly into the dense woods. It was a little wilderness preservation. As we came up to the first hill, we looked down at the bottom into the blackness. We both noticed what appeared to be a tiny, moving ball of dim-lit light down there. It moved so strangely, and it was extremely difficult to make out what it was. Rather than shine our light down, we curiously watched it for a few moments, whispering to each other about what it could possibly be. All at once, the small light turned into multiple blinding lights and extremely loud revving sounds. It was overwhelming our senses that had become accustomed to the darkened silence. Acting purely on fear, we instantly turned around and ran as fast as we could, hearing yelling and the revving gaining behind us. By sheer luck, we managed to run off of the path into a very dark, very overgrown hole in the side of the hill, overlooking where we had just come from. We decided to hide in this natural dugout of this hill, hoping that the plants in the darkness would be enough to protect us of whatever was out there and what was happening. We watched our pursuers ride up to where we had originally been standing at. There were 4 men, 2 on 4-wheelers, and 2 on full-sized motorcycles. They were yelling at each other about something, but we couldn't make it out. We couldn't make it out due to the distance that we had covered. We felt safe enough to whisper very softly to each other, speculated who these people could be. Our first thought was maybe they were park rangers of some kind, although we had never seen one in here. And we've been here many times, and honestly we doubted that because this county didn't have the budget, or even the desire to have any type of patrol in these deep woods at night. Besides that, these men were on vehicles entirely inappropriate for paved bike trails, and they were very angry about something. They called out to us for a while, yelling things like, "We know you're out there," and that they could see us, and to come out. We stayed silent and decided to call their bluff instead of running. Eventually, we clearly heard one of the men yell, "Find them now," and smash a bottle. That had erased any hope that we had, that these were just park rangers. We watched them split up, each of them going in different ways down the series of paths on their vehicles, including the path that we were on. It took us what felt like ages to even move. We were frozen in terror inside this dugout, watching the lights from the vehicles travel through the woods, one of them already coming full circle and passing the point that he started from. I thought about calling for help, but I was too afraid to even open my phone in fear that they would see even the smallest amount of light, and it would give away our location. After waiting for the lights of the vehicles to reach their farthest destination, we finally summoned the nerve to get up and try to run somewhere far enough from these people to safely make a call. We ran as hard and as fast as we possibly could through those woods. Since their headlights gave away their location on these paths, we would hide again whenever we felt like they were getting too close to us. Our available hiding spots were getting progressively worse as the woods became less dense, and the fear that I felt waiting for one of them to drive past us, while basically only being covered by leaves and the plants, may still be unmatched to this day. Finally, we emerged from the woods onto an intersection of 2 main roads, far from where we started. We ducked down into the ditch to call for help. When I opened my phone, I noticed I had recent missed calls from one of our other friends, Connor, who were supposed to meet up with us after our longboard excursion. I called him and frantically asked him where he was. Luck was with us again. He hadn't given up on our plans despite us ignoring him, and was only a few miles away, already heading in our direction. I gave him the name of the 2 streets we were near, and explained that we needed to be picked up right away. He agreed to speed over to us, while Justin and I waited in hiding. Thankfully, Connor arrived before any of these men did. We bolted into the backseat of his car, yelling for him to get out of here, and he took off. Relief doesn't begin to describe what I felt being safely driven home after everything I had just experienced. After explaining everything that happened to Connor, we ended up just moving on with our night and decided not to call the police. We figured that they would be gone by this time, and by the time that any officer made it out there, and that we would be putting ourselves at risk by admitting to breaking the law by taking those paths so late at night. I still have no idea what happened or who those people were. I've been told all kinds of theories from friends and family that have heard this story. Some of them think that we walked right up to a huge drug deal. Justin and I admitted to each other that later on, when we started hearing the revving and we couldn't see, our minds went straight to chainsaw-wielding horror movie serial killer. So I suppose it could have been worse. Frustratingly enough, whatever those men thought that we saw, that made them want to come catch us so badly, we never actually saw. But what they were doing, we'll never really know, I suppose. At the time of this story, I was 8. I was playing with my friends in the woods. We were just out there playing tag like usual. And then I blinked my eye, and all of my friends were gone. Me and my friends watched a lot of YouTube videos that were based on pranks like Jesse V and stuff, but we cared about each other a lot. So much that we couldn't even pull a prank on each other. Not even once. I got really scared at that point. I kept trying to find them and to find a way out of the woods. But suddenly I started bleeding, and I heard these screeching noises. And it was pitch black outside. I'm trapped in the woods, and then I saw a girl. And she looked a lot like Julian. She was wearing a pink dress. I ran towards her and said, "Julian, I finally found you." But she didn't answer. Then she looked down at me and turned into a creature. Then I knew it wasn't Jillian. I saw the light in my house and I ran towards it, towards the light, and made it out of the woods when I heard Julian's voice down in the woods saying, "Come here. There is something down there. I'm never going down there again." I know it happened. It may have been my imagination. I was so young. But something was there. "Look, Amanda," I said. "The police are stopping the search. They said they haven't found a trace of anything, and it's been 5 days now." Amanda looked at me with such malice and hatred that I felt a chill run down my spine. "So you just want to stop? You just want to stop the search now? I mean, it's only our daughter. She's out there, frightened, and you just want to stop the search?" I felt as if I had been punched in the gut. Tears were welling up, but I managed to reply, "Don't even say that. Of course I want them to continue the search, but I'm not in charge. It's up to the police. Please, honey, don't see me as an enemy. I love you. I love Charlene." "Don't speak of her name," she yelled. "You just see the search as an inconvenience to you. Leave me be." I did as she asked, going out of the bedroom and into the living room of our cabin. I sat down on the couch, hands on face, and I cried over our loss of our daughter, and now my estranged wife. That night I decided to sleep on the couch. I heard Amanda sobbing throughout the night. Even though I wanted to comfort her, I felt she needed the space. The next morning, I awoke tired and stiff from the bad spell of sleep. I decided to make some breakfast, eggs and bacon, and brought it up to her. "Here, darling, I made you breakfast," I said. She looked at me with her puffy red eyes. "Is that all you can think of, when our daughter is somewhere out there, scared out of her life?" I sighed. "Look, it won't do any good for us to stop our lives, stop taking care of ourselves. You need to eat." She looked away, tears welling up. The day continued like that, me trying to get any contact to Amanda, and her turning down my attempts. It made me sadder each time, as I really wanted to connect with her again. Needing to connect to her. After After all, she was my wife, and I wanted to help her in this situation, as well as myself. I couldn't go through all of this alone, and I wasn't sure that she could either. I had to make some sort of breakthrough. The day went on like that, me trying to do anything to make a connection with Amanda, and her either ignoring me completely or getting aggressive towards me. Each time I failed, it felt like we were gliding farther and farther from each other. Each time I felt like my heart was being stomped on. I felt worse and worse. As the day faded into evening, I decided to make dinner for us. I helped Amanda down to the dining room and sat her in her chair. I sat down in mine and we started eating. A bit into the meal, I glanced at her, checking to see how she was doing. She was just poking her fork at the meal, her stare shifting from the meal to the window, then back to the meal, letting out a long, sad sigh. It pained me to see her like this, not her normal, cheerful self. But then again, I was a total mess inside. But I felt I had to stay strong for both of us. Wouldn't do any good for both of us, just crumbled down and stopped functioning out here, in the middle of the woods. I was also angry on top of all of the sadness. Angry that the cops and the park rangers decided that it was too dangerous to continue the search. There had been a massive rain about a week ago. There had been some flooding, and the rangers had said that the conditions were bad. Therefore, the search would be called off for now. I had shouted at them, pleaded with them, but to no avail. The ranger had said that he understood me, but he couldn't risk the lives of the search party. It made me angry that they could just wave off the life of a 4-year-old like that. Such an inconvenience to search for her. And eventually, I broke down in tears. Amanda looked at me and started crying too. The next day, we just sat in the dining room, looking at each other, then looking out the window, all in silence. We both knew how each other felt. We also knew that we couldn't just go out and search on our own. For starters, we didn't really know the woods. We could easily get lost in there if we went too far. Secondly, we weren't equipped for the long stretch in the woods, and our clothing wasn't really helpful against the elements. We probably wouldn't survive for long if we got lost. No need for that, no matter the circumstance. I tried several times to talk to her. Sometimes she acknowledges me. Other times she just stares out the window, or stared right at me, or right past me. She never really answered. Then again, it was hard to even make small talk at this point, after what has happened. And I didn't know what to really talk to her about. The incident was just weighing heavily upon both of us. And again, this day seemed to fade away like a dream that you can't really remember. I was a bit surprised when I realized that it had turned dark outside. I stood up and was going to prepare dinner. Then I thought that I heard Charlene's voice coming from the woods. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared." Followed by a short, muffled scream. That's the best way I can describe it. Now I was starting to hear things. I looked at Amanda and saw her eyes were wide open, as well as her mouth. Had she heard it too? We looked at each other in a stunned silence. Then we heard again, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared." Followed by a muffled scream. But there was something wrong. I just couldn't put my finger on it. But there was something at the back of my mind warning me against this. Amanda shouted Charlene and leapt up. She didn't even put on her shoes. She just ran outside. I tried to call her, to stop her, but she was gone in an instant. I ran after her, hoping she would come to her senses. "Amanda!" I yelled. I saw her run right into the woods, darting past the trees and the stumps. I ran after her as fast as I could. She kept darting out of my sight, but I yelled at her, "Amanda, please stop." As I ran into a small clearing, I could see Amanda there, looking in each direction. "Honey, please," I said. "We don't know where she is. It won't help her if we get lost in here." She looked at me with such fury that I thought for a second that she hated me. "Well, then go back to the cabin. Go back and just leave our daughter in these woods. You don't care about her. You don't even care about me." The force of the words, the angry tone, and the hatred in her eyes. The words in our current situation were too much for me. I could feel the tears well up in my eyes. I covered my face with my hands and cried a bit. "Don't even suggest that, honey. You two are my world," I said. As I removed my hands from my face, I realized Amanda was gone. "Amanda!" I screamed, now getting a bit scared. Where had she gone? "Amanda!" I screamed again, more urgently. I heard some rustling of the leaves from my right. I didn't think, I just sprinted there, calling out Amanda every few seconds. It was hard to navigate these woods in the dark. I called out to Amanda, then tried to listen for any sounds from either Amanda or Charlene. After a few minutes, I heard it again, from behind. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm scared." But it was not Charlene's voice. It sounded like several voices at once. A cold chill ran down my spine. What on earth could that be? Then, to my left, Amanda's voice. "Oh, honey, I've missed you so much. Come to Mommy." Followed by a blood-curdling scream. "Amanda!" I yelled as I ran towards the sound. Branches flew as I hurried by, towards where I heard Amanda scream. What's going on in these woods? I thought as I ran. Suddenly I tripped over something. I fell down hard, knocking my forehead. I saw stars as I lay on the ground, wondering what happened. Then as my vision started to clear, I realized I tripped over a person. A person wearing what seemed to be Amanda's clothing, although it was ripped in places. And there was blood. Oh God, there was so much blood. I screamed as I realized what I was seeing. It was Amanda, or what was left of her. Her torso had been cut open, from the neck down to her hip. Most of her innards were gone, and her face, oh God, her beautiful face. The eyes were gone. The mouth was open and terrified. I hugged her, crying, screaming her name. The pain was unbearable. Then I heard it, rustling of leaves behind me, and Amanda's voice saying, "Oh, honey, I've missed you so much. Come to Mommy." For 3 summers, I worked in an old county hospital that my buddy's uncle owned. It was without a doubt the worst time of my life, as I today worked completely alone until around the end of my time there. There's plenty of history between this building and I, which if it interests people enough, I'll divulge, but I want to focus on a specific story. Prior to my employment there, we spent 2 nights in this building. This will cover the second night. It was my buddy. Names have been changed for privacy reasons. We'll call him Chris. And my brother Luke and I. We brought a video camera with us and we rode ATVs around the property for most of the day before entering the building. Once we were in the building, we set up our base camp on the third floor in a day room. Basically just an open space where the people could hang out, like a common area. The third floor was a medical ward, which housed a hospital unit, at one of the thickest doors I've ever personally seen. At least 4 inches thick, with only deadbolts to open and close it, along with the observation windows and a nurse's station for just that room. Gives me chills just thinking about it. Anyway, we set up camp and then worked our way through the building, filming as we go. We worked our way through the building in about 2.5 to maybe 3 hours, and it was around 10:30 to 11 by that time. We ended up getting back to base. It was about then that we heard a tapping noise, like metal opening and closing. On a calm, windless night, it didn't seem like this was possible, but we wrote it off as maybe just a wind trap in the nurse's station. We gathered sleeping bags and our sodas and chat before Luke looked at us and said, "Guys, I can't do this. I'm really uneasy and I just want to go." Well, Chris and I were like, "Okay, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and escort you down to the car and you'll be safe there." We go ahead and escort him down, get greeted by the German Shepherd on guard duty, and then we head back up. We get up and settle in. Chris can fall asleep anywhere instantly, something that he said was a hell of a skill once he joined the army. But it's important as I couldn't sleep at all. I could hear the pup wandering around outside before he laid down outside the window. It was a clear, calm night. We could hear his nails on the cement, all the way on the third floor. Then suddenly he got up and started growling and barking. My heart has never, ever beat that fast. I slowly got up and peered out the window down, and I could see the pup looking back, up at me, growling. Talk about a heart-stopping moment. I kicked Chris and told him what was happening, and he said that it was normal to just go back to bed. Cool, here I was thinking that maybe we might just get killed. I took a few breaths and then crawled back into my sleeping bag and tried to settle in. I was down for what felt like no more than 10 minutes when I sort of woke up. I checked my phone and it was about 12:30-ish when I heard the most gut-wrenching sound of my life. Something I will never be able to explain or forget. A loud, unending scream that didn't echo. I would have written it off as just an animal, but midway through, whatever it was screamed, "Oh fuck, please stop." Then as it quickly started, it ended. I could feel my fingers trembling, but white-knuckled around my knife. I barely managed to call out to Chris, who didn't respond. I so badly wanted to leave, but couldn't force myself to move. I swear I didn't sleep, but eventually daylight broke, and I was up and packing immediately. I woke up Chris and we went down to the car. I asked Chris about it, and he said that he hadn't heard anything, but Luke had just as weird of a night. He said he could see shadows moving in the surrounding areas of the building, but every time he turned the car lights on to check, they were gone. He said it happened multiple times, but he just closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Needless to say, I have absolutely no clue as to why I decided to work there after all of this. But if you'd like to hear more of these creepy/scary moments from my time here, let me know. About 2 years ago, I started to get these extremely vivid dreams I would remember, and I would remember every single one. Feel them kind of, if that makes sense. They got even more frequent, to all of the time, every night. But something changed. They started becoming really disturbing, like me murdering people I care about, me being mutilated, and in most, I am having a literal mental breakdown. Sometimes I wake up just disturbed and crying. About 4 months ago, I heard whispering, knocking, footsteps, but they sounded so distant, like someone was far away, banging on a door. Like they were trying to get in, or walking downstairs, but it sounded so distant, like when you go into a room during a party, and the music sounds muffled and distant. And one night, I heard the knocking and whispering, etc. And then I heard someone say my name. But it was close, and it was my grandmother who passed away years ago. Immediately I had a major panic attack, and the more I panicked, the louder and louder it got, like angry. I feel like I'm literally slipping away from my own reality. Please help. They're still happening. The story is 100% true and happened probably almost 2 years ago. I was 15 at the time, and everyone in the house was gone for the night. My mom and stepdad had gone out, and my brothers were at their friend's house. I was pretty used to being home alone. I'm pretty fearless when it comes to scary things happening. But this night scared the death out of me. The sun had set. It was probably around 10 p.m. when I started hearing weird bangs coming from the outside. I ignored it for about 20 minutes until it continuously got louder and more consistent. I finally paused the TV and just sat there listening. It was coming from all over the house, outside of it, literally every side. We have a security system that talks whenever one of the doors open. For example, when our doors open, it goes, "Back door open." So we always know when someone's entering the house. We've had some previous experiences with break-ins. Anyways, I'm sitting there, terrified. I started texting one of my older brothers about these noises, but he told me that it was probably just a few drunks from the bar down the street. Eventually, I got so worked up, I called him. As we were on the phone, our alarm starts talking. "Back door open." My heart immediately dropped into my stomach, and my brother had heard it through the phone. I started sobbing and he yelled for me to go into his room, grab his knife under his bed, and sit in the corner. He was already in his friend's car, and they were on their way. I was shaking so bad that I couldn't even hold the knife. It took them less than 10 minutes to arrive, and they immediately checked all over, with knives and baseball bats in their hands. They found nothing, and when we reviewed our security footage, there was nothing. We still have no idea what was banging, and who it was, or how our back door opened. But soon after, we bought a dog. I'm still superstitious about being left home alone. My coworker just told me about what happened to him on a delivery last night. Last night at about 9:30, he went out on a delivery. He shows up at this house, which has a long driveway, and goes into the woods, and the house was completely dark. No lights, and the blinds were closed. He knocks on the door and waits about 4 minutes till he knocks again. No answer. Again he walks back in. No answer again. So he walks back to his car when an LED light is shining in his face through the window. Then a man starts screaming at him to get on his stomach or he will shoot him. He does as he is told, and the man steps outside and points the gun at him, asking who he was and why he was there. He nervously tells him that he's just the pizza delivery guy and that he was told to come here. The guy doesn't believe it and thinks he's lying to him and threatens to shoot him again. He checked the receipt and he was given the wrong address. The guy told my coworker to leave and never come back or else. He made it out of there and came back to the pizzeria, scared as fuck, and told everyone what happened. Then he quit that day. I was home alone 2 days ago, while my parents were staying over at their friend's house. They were having a wine tasting party and both got tipsy, so they decided to stay in the guest house. I was completely fine with being alone. It was already 11 p.m. at that time, so I headed to bed. It was at 3 a.m. when I woke up with my heart pounding in my chest. My eyes were wide and I was fully awake when I heard a loud noise coming from downstairs. I heard glass shattering and the sound of my front door being beaten down. The house was pitch black, so I decided to quickly take a look at the corner of the stairs to see what was happening before I made a decision on what to do. My heart started pounding harder out of the feeling of complete horror when I saw one man breaking down my entire front door, along with the steel frame that held it together. I was frozen in place, gripping into the railing, watching him run into the door over and over again until one hinge broke off and he fell inside on his knees. But he quickly got back up and took off through the downstairs part of the house. I realized he was coming upstairs soon, so I quietly rushed back into my room and locked the door. I got my phone from my dresser and called 911. Luckily, the police patrolled this area quite often, so I knew it wouldn't take them long for them to come out. The operator said they have units on the way, and she told me to stay quiet, to be in a locked room, which I was. Suddenly I heard a sound of heavy footsteps running upstairs, and my whole body stiffened. I heard him entering the bathroom first, but quickly leaving the area. Next he entered my parents' bedroom, which thankfully was empty. I heard him opening the drawers, knocking things onto the ground, and rummaging through my parents' belongings. Next he went into the guest room, but quickly left that too. The only room left was mine now. I saw the door handle move, and once he realized it was locked, he started to shoulder the door, like he did to the front door. I started to crawl into a safer space, to hide just in case he managed to get inside. My heart was still pounding like crazy. My chest was hurting, and I started feeling the sense of denial. I couldn't believe this was happening. Then, I saw the flashing red and blue lights from outside, reflecting off of my wall, and I heard him stop. I heard his footsteps run downstairs again. There was commotion from downstairs, but it quickly faded out through the front door. I peeked through my blinds and saw him being taken to the third squad car that was in my driveway. Finally, my heart rate started to go back to normal. The police boarded up the door as a temporary fix until we can finally get a new door. Thankfully, everything he stole was recovered since he dropped everything going down the stairs, and the rest of the stuff when he got arrested. My parents couldn't come home that night, but they were upset at the news. I still feel a little bit delirious from this. I still can't believe this happened, and I can't believe how clumsy that guy was, and how he wasn't caught sooner by someone on the street in front of my house. But what's done is done, and hopefully this won't ever happen again. I was up late last night, watching TV when my cell phone rings. It was my friend Maria, asking for a ride. I was confused at first because she has a car. Maria is 30 years old and a female. So here's the story. She starts explaining to me that she met this guy on Tinder, good-looking 35-year-old. They have decided to meet at a nightclub. Maria took an Uber because she was planning on drinking, and also the guy said that he would give her a ride home. Anyways, it's Saturday night, past 10 p.m. She gets there first, and eventually he arrives. Let's call him Rob. So Maria and Rob have a good connection. They dance and flirt a little. He doesn't drink because he's her ride home. Around 12:30 a.m., Maria and Rob decide to call it a night. They get in his car and he starts to drive. Maria gives him directions to her house, which is a couple of cities away. He tells her that he wants to take her to a nice view area. She agrees, not thinking much about it. After like 20 minutes or so, she realized that they were driving and have been for a long time, and there's not much around. So she realized that he was taking her to a remote area, if you could say. By the way, my friend is very paranoid. She's a very paranoid person, and she's also really into the murder shows. Anyways, she spots a gas station and tells him she needs to use the bathroom. He seems a bit annoyed, but takes her anyway. He parked the car and gets out too. He says he's buying some cigarettes. As they were walking in, he grabs her by the butt and squeezes hard and whispers in her ear, "I'm gonna hit it so hard tonight." Side note, keep in mind that the gas station is closed. It's only an older guy at the window. This was my phone conversation between me and her. She gets inside the bathroom, and that's where she calls me. She sounds scared and I felt nervous for her safety. She begged me to come pick her up. I tell her to call the cops, but she refused. She's whispering to the phone and telling me that she has no clue where they are. I tell her to click the maps on her iPhone and that it would tell her the location. She tells me she's about 1 hour away from home. She also tells me that there's nothing but green around the map, which indicates just trees and hills. She snapped a picture of the Google Maps and sent it to me. I tell her to stay in the bathroom, that I'm on my way. Suddenly I hear in the background, the guy. She tells me he wants to use the bathroom too. She tells me to hold on, and I hear the door open, and he tells her to wait outside, while he does his business. I hear the door slam and the footsteps right after. Out of breath, she starts talking to me. She said that she was running away. She's on the side of the road running in the direction they came from. I tell her to hide behind some trees if there are any. I'm already driving at this point. After like 10 minutes, she tells me that she can hear a car. She hides behind some trees and tells me that it's him. The car has its lights off and is driving slow. At this point, she starts to ask me what to do. I tell her she needs to call the police, but she doesn't listen. I don't know why, but she just started going back to the gas station. She tells me that she's on low battery, so we agreed that she was going to hang up and I'll be calling her when I'm nearby. I'm finally in the area after like 45 minutes on the road. and I spot a car with a guy inside, and I immediately realized who it was. I avoided eye contact because I didn't want to look suspicious. I called my friend, and she answered right away. I tell her that I'm only like 2 minutes away, and I tell her that I spotted the guy, and he is probably still looking for her. I tell her I'm going to pretend to pump gas. She tells me that she's hiding behind the trees across from the gas station. I tell her to stay there. I tell her that he will probably come back to see what I'm doing. I have an earpiece on and a hoodie. I'm trying to avoid any attention that I'm talking to anyone on the cell phone. I don't know why, but I knew this guy was following me back to the gas station. As I'm standing outside of the car, pretending to pump, he pulled in. I immediately got nervous. He parked in the back close to the bathroom. My friend said that she saw him too. She said that she's able to make a run towards my car without being seen. I tell her to go for it. Run as fast as you can. I see her running towards my car, wearing a short dress and heels in hand. I kept an eye on him without making it obvious. He goes inside of the bathroom and closes the door. I let her know to start running even faster if she can. She jumps in the back seat and lays down on the floor. I jumped into the front seat and pulled out as normal as I could at a regular speed, trying not to bring any attention. I hear my friend from behind me, trying to catch her breath. She keeps saying, thank you so much. I tell her it's gonna be okay. After like 10 minutes, she sits up, tells me how he was calling her like crazy while on the phone with me. She blocked him and we called it a night. Eventually we got home safe without any car following behind. Today is the next day. She called me this morning while at work and told me that he knows where she works. Apparently the phone rang when she answered, and there was silence on the other side. She tells me that she's convinced that it's him. Yes, she told him where she works. She then asked me if I could go past her parking lot where she works to see if he's there. I told my boyfriend all about last night, and he agreed to come with me. Also, I don't want to drive my car and be recognized. I'm driving to her workplace as I'm typing this. I'll keep you updated if anything happens. Don't trust all those guys or girls on Tinder. This is kind of a spoiler for the people who aren't caught up on the No Sleep podcast, or just don't listen to it. But here we go anyway. It was episode 22 of season 12, and I was in my bedroom, alone, of course. They were telling some pretty generic stories, if I have to say, when I heard something strange. It was on the story. A car accident can change everything was the title. I was feeling like I was making a big deal out of nothing, so I just said to myself, I can relate and confirm this is true. Then I thought, if I commented that on anything related to a car crash on Reddit, I would get attacked. It isn't wrong though, so I was at least thinking logically. The story started slow, creepy, and music was playing like usual. Nothing I was freaked out by because the No Sleep podcast does the dramatic effects. I was sitting there just about to shut my eyes when I heard a scream. Confused, I went back a bit to see if it was on the podcast or not. I was praying it was just some dramatic effect in the podcast, but to my horror, it wasn't in the podcast. It came from my kitchen. Of course I'm not going to investigate because I'm not an idiot. Instead, I tried to ignore it to the best of my ability. Then it happened again. I was concerned but very confused. Bad part is I live alone. Nothing for me to worry about too much because I have noisy neighbors that probably already made an angel cry with how loud they are. I thought one of them was drunk or something and hurt themselves. Did I mention that I live in an apartment on the bad side of town? No. I believed what my mind thought, turned on the podcast, closed my eyes, and tried to drift off. But I heard the scream again. This time, it was coming from what sounded from my closet. Immediately, I jumped up from my bed. The closet door was creaking. My house is oddly built, and the doors aren't on the right things, so I had a lock on my closet door. Then it looked like someone was trying to open my closet door from the inside. I said to it, "Stay back. Don't come out of my closet, you screaming freak." Probably not my best idea to yell that. I grabbed my phone, paused the podcast, and called the police. They investigated the house and looked in the closet, did the whole shindig, and I just sat there, shaking. To this day, I will never open my closet again. I really hope that it was on the podcast, but I wasn't that lucky. Okay, so this is gonna sound really freaky. I think it's fake myself. Maybe I was just seeing stuff. My friend who I know in real life about 20 minutes ago called me on Discord. It was kind of random, so I just accepted it, and he switched it to his camera. Now this is where it's gonna seem really fake, but I swear this happened. I was playing my game before I noticed that he put on his camera, and when I realized, he was pointing it at someone. The camera view kinda looked weird, like it was in a pouch or a backpack, and for some reason I like to stand up sometimes when I'm typing or looking through something closely. I noticed the person he was pointing at was me. It only showed my back, and as soon as I turned around and turned back to my PC, he left the call. This sounds really fake, but I don't know. Behind me is my backpack, and one of the pouches are pointed at me. Nothing was there unless I missed something. But yeah, this stuff sounds fake to me as well. But I'm 99% that it was real. He just went offline after the call, and I hadn't heard anything for the rest of the night. I think nearly everyone has heard these tales of Ouija boards and frightening seances gone horribly wrong. When I was a young teen, I was scoffed at such tales while at the same time finding them seductively compelling. I enjoyed scary movies and loved the classic haunted houses with the spider webs, the creaky stairs, and the weakly flickering candles, the only protection from whatever inhabited the attic or walked the long dark hallways after midnight. It was all harmless fun, I used to think, until I realized such things are real. At times, a little too real for my liking. It is a reality that I have to wrestle with, at times, existential ramifications arising from it. They say the best deception the devil ever perpetrated was the convincing of mankind that he does not exist. If you don't believe in something, how can you hope to defend or guard yourself against it? How would you recognize it? The devil does not want us to believe in God, so he goes about his business in the dark and secret, the quintessential coward. But it is said the greatest coward can be the one that hurts the most with ferocity. Make no mistake about it, Ouija boards and seances are dangerous. The following account is just one example of what happened to not only one of those foolish people enough to participate in such activities, but also to innocent bystanders, as it were. It was over 40 years ago. A young mother and her 4-year-old daughter, fleeing from an abusive husband and father, moved into a new home with hopes for a fresh start, and safety and security at last. Not an easy thing for a woman to do in those days, by any stretch. But little were they to know that the house was not exactly unoccupied, and that another, more harrowing trauma was literally on their doorstep, just waiting to be let in. It seemed the previous occupants had not quite taken everything with them when they packed. It started off gradually, as many of these things do, with awful death-like smells coming and going from nowhere. There must have also been an opening or breach somewhere in the new home, where large disgusting blowflies were getting in at, but its exact location could never be pinned down. Then started the dreams of a tall, dark figure in a long coat and hat, like Jack the Ripper, Dr. Mengele, and Freddy Krueger combined to form a Victorian-era djinn from hell, you may say. Things worsened. Whatever was in the house was getting more powerful, more bold, perhaps gaining strength from their negative emotions of the stress and the fear that the creature, or whatever it was, began more and more to cement itself into reality, inflicting bites and scratches on the poor terrified mother while she slept. A ploy, I now believe, to emotionally and spiritually disable and weaken her, so as to leave her child even more vulnerable to its vile and disciple intentions. The 4-year-old girl was now to become the focus of this entity, with her recalling visions of dark shapes and shadows, and a tall man wearing a coat and hat, entering her bedroom at night. Almost 12 months had passed since moving into this house, and this one night, the entity attempted an assault on the child. The horror, the revulsion and terror and confusion this little 4-year-old girl suddenly felt reverberated through the house upon the blood-curdling screams. Her mother could no longer deny the reality that was happening. She immediately sought the help of a priest who coincidentally blessed the house and cleansed the house to their knowledge. And to their knowledge, the thing, the demon, the psychopathic spirit, or whatever it was gone, and whatever gateway it came through was now closed. The sweet little 4-year-old girl is now about 45, and she lives in that house to this day, and I see her regularly. We are good mates. I have been there many a time, and felt nothing or seen anything out of the ordinary. It is just as ordinary as any other ordinary street in an ordinary suburb. Could be any suburb, really. Could be your suburb. Afterward, I have decided not to identify the people who are the subject to the story, to avoid any embarrassment or undue attention. That's what happened. Let's move on. Nothing to see here, etc. Except maybe the giant glaring warning, for it later to come out from a neighbor that the previous owners hosted regularly weekly seances with ambiguous Ouija boards at center stage every Wednesday night. Does Wednesday have some significance? I don't know. Did they somehow conjure something from the very depths of hell? Or was it unintentional? Maybe a mistake. Was it this thing that drove them to put this house on the market in the first place? If so, they have a case to answer. Such an act constitutes gross negligence, like a spiritual hit-and-run drunk driver. Kind of. It is definitely not cool. You make a mess and you gotta clean it up. To meddle in such stuff in the first place is just downright stupid. To flee and leave for some other poor soul to suffer and clean up, if they survive, is almost the lowest act, and perhaps gives you an idea of the mentality of these people to begin with. It's stupid and dangerous, and not worth losing your soul over. This actually happened to me about 2 weeks ago. 2 good friends of mine who live in the state over decided to come visit me. We bought some good time supplies, and one night, really, really late, we had all sobered up and found ourselves with nothing to do. One of my friends, we'll call her Alex, and I had been already messing around with this Ouija board from before, on a few occasions. We both know a lot about them and managed to rally up the hopes of our respective boyfriends. Let's get scared. Let's just freak out ourselves. Neither of the men were true believers, so we figured, why not? Something to do. So we made a Ouija board. Nobody ever tells you that playing with the Ouija board is a good, safe, or fun thing to do. Ever. Prior to this night, I did actually think they were fun. But quickly, I understood why so many people had warned me about these boards. For the first 10 or 15 minutes, it was mostly us just asking questions to empty air. Then Alex suggested that we turn off the lights. We lit candles and turned on the radio for the white noise, and let the room get dark. That's when things started to get weird. The plankette, before we could even ask if anything was there, moved directly and quickly to hello. To which I asked, "Who are you?" The static noise from the radio stopped. It was dead silent. The plankette spelled out very quickly, Zozo. I can't remember specifically all of the questions that we asked, but I remember some of the answers. It told us to get help. And when we asked for whom, it spelled out white cat. That's my big kitty, Sly Pooper, and the next day he was limping with a hurt rear leg. He was fine the day before. I don't know what happened. When we asked Zozo to give us a sign of his presence, he spelled out, stop. Around that time, we started to hear weird screeching noises coming from the radio. But I figured it was just interference and I turned it off. Then half of the things on top of the fridge fell to the floor. A bag of bananas, a container of garlic clover, a glass dish, and a bag of onions crashed onto the floor. And before I could even react, half of the candles blew out too. We acknowledged Zozo out loud and thanked him. I have lived in this apartment for 10 months, and I've never seen anything like that happen. I was freaked out. It was getting real. We decided to ask Zozo to leave. He told us no. We decided to tell it to leave. The blanket kept going back and forth from hello to no. It did this 7 or 8 times. My 2 friends took their fingers off the blanket. They were scared. My boyfriend and I were the only ones with the fingers on it. I was the medium. But out of nowhere, my boyfriend demanded Zozo to leave because he was not welcome in our home. My brain was like, what a bad fucking idea. We began to try and move the blanket in circles like if you were trying to expect an answer. And all of a sudden, it fucking stopped. On hello. The hello spot on the Ouija board, and it would not fucking move. We actually slid the whole board off the table trying to get it to move. It was being pushed down, hard. My boyfriend and I only had a finger on it each. I guess anything is possible. But I can't see how it could have been him, and I know it wasn't me. The next morning I folded the board into 3, and I buried it off of a nature trail at the end of my town. There were really weird things happening in my house until recently. While I was in the bathroom late at night, what looked like to be 2 feet was obscured by the light shining under the door. The door to our office locks from the outside. And while my boyfriend and I were in there, it locked. His 2-year-old was in the bed sleeping. I just don't think she's agile and tall enough to even reach the lock on the door without anyone hearing her, noticing. Plus, the thing with my cat's hurt back leg. We would hear things in our bedroom being thrown around, and what sounded like people walking around in the living room at night. It all sort of gradually stopped. Nothing really obtrusive has been happening lately. Author's note. My friend and I didn't take the Ouija board seriously, and our boyfriends didn't believe it at all. We had one session that went all rogue and freaky, actually. It made my house haunted for like a week or so. I won't tell you not to mess with it, because that's dumb. Just be ready for things to get real very fast. I have a bunch of chilling stories about my experiences with Ouija boards that will always stick with me. So I grew up in a 1930s farmhouse. We were always seeing things around the house, but nothing was ever threatening. And one day we were cleaning out the front porch. We were having a garage sale, and we decided to sell an old dollhouse that was mine and my sister's. When we moved, the dollhouse we found, an old Ouija board behind it. Apparently it belonged to my grandmother, but we were all confused on how it ended up in the house, and in that particular spot. Now my dad was extremely against it, that it was even in the house, so I took it to our playhouse in the backyard, and my friends would come over and we would play around with it on occasion. One day we were asking questions and seemed to be talking to two younger spirits. They were a female, and the word drunk, ditch, and prom kept spelling out on the board. Fast forward a few months, and I was working for my dad's lawn care business. We were at a particular house owned by a kind old lady who would typically invite me in after I finished weed whacking and would talk with me. One day after I finished, I started talking about weed whacking the ditch out by the road, and what she said freaked me out. Randomly, she brings up a story on how a car crashed into her ditch years ago on a nearby school prom night. She told me that the driver was drunk and the two girl passengers were killed. I immediately thought back to my experience with the Ouija board, and I'm pretty sure these were the same two girls that my friends and I talked with. It still gives me chills to this day when I tell this story. Whenever I tell this story, it always gets laughed off. So maybe you guys will believe me. Trust me, I wish this story wasn't true. So in middle school, I had a Ouija board and I just let it collect dust. But one day, a group of friends and I were super bored, so we decided to pull it out. The first time we used the Ouija board, it already got hella sketchy. We heard knocking, objects moving, stuff like that. For some odd reason, I trusted the entities, and my friends and I kept coming back to the board. We used all the precautions, like putting salt on the board. But one time, the piece that spelled out words started moving rapidly in figure eights. Apparently this isn't good, but I didn't know it at that time, so we kept playing. The entity, which I'm pretty sure was a demon, claimed to be my friend's deceased grandmother, or something like that. We believed it. We asked it to move things, and it did. But then something really scary happened. Something fucking touched my knee. We'd get chills down our spines, and then I saw my light switch scroll down right in front of my eyes and turn back off. My friend said, "Keep your fingers on the piece. Don't take them off." Y'all don't understand how bad I wanted to dash out of that room. Anyway, we kept going, and then it fucking spoke. I didn't know ghosts could do that, or demons. Whatever the fuck it was, but it spoke. It said something inaudible, but we think it might have said love. All good, right? It loves us. Nope. That voice was the scariest thing I've ever heard to this date. It was just robotic-like, monotoned voice, no emotion, no soul. Very unsettling. After that, I'd hear knocking in the room for about a year, but it started to calm down. Anyone care to explain what the fuck happened? Hopefully, y'all believe me. Now, before you leave the video, I wanted to say thanks for watching and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more of these types of stories, make sure to comment down in the comment section. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you do enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe. Turn on those post notifications so you don't miss a new video. There's going to be a lot more coming, I promise. I'm trying to get back to my regular schedule. It's gradually but surely coming back, and I promise I'm going to get it back to normal. I'm trying to get all of these out for you guys because I know you guys want some new content. So, with that being said, also if you want to know like updates or anything like that before the stories or videos come out, make sure to check out the links in my description, my Twitter, Instagram, and if you want to submit a story, which I would gladly love to tell some subscriber stories, my Gmail is in there as well. Once again, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully my schedule gets back to normal. I would really like